Welcome to the 2021 Annual Business Meeting of Vizo Financial Corporate Credit Union. We want to remind everyone that only authorized representatives of our member credit unions may address the meeting. To properly record the minutes of this meeting, we will need you to identify yourself and the member credit union you represent prior to addressing the meeting. We will not be taking motions and seconds for actions, but rather will only request opposition to any actions being addressed. If there are no objections, we will accept the action as carried. To address the meeting with a comment or an opposition to any actions, select the raised hand icon and your line will be unmuted. If at any time you are having problems with the transmission or communication, please use the chat feature in this Zoom application or email marketing@vfccu.org. At this time, I would like to appoint Sam Cortez, attorney at law, Fox Rothschild, LLP, as our parliamentarian for the meeting. I would like to introduce the current board of directors. Myself, Jerry King, Chair, Dexday Federal Credit Union, Wilmington, Delaware. Scott Woods, Vice Chair, South Carolina Federal Credit Union, North Charleston, South Carolina. Jeff Chelius, Treasurer, Riverfront Federal Credit Union, Reading, PA. Scott Weaver, Secretary, Carolina Foothills Federal Credit Union, Greenville, South Carolina. Dan Berry, Duke University Federal Credit Union, Durham, North Carolina. Janice DeCourte, Health Share Credit Union, Greensboro, North Carolina. Allison DeTunk, University of Virginia Community Credit Union, Charlottesville, Virginia. And Mark Valponi, USX Federal Credit Union, Cranberry Township, Pennsylvania. Our Supervisory Committee members are Richard C. Burtnett, Chair, Belco Community Credit Union, Harrisburg, PA. Michael Parker, Secured Advantage Federal Credit Union, Simpsonville, South Carolina. And Kimberly Witt, MTC Federal Credit Union, Greenville, South Carolina. Vizo Financial Credit Committee members are Janice DeCourte from our board, serves as chair. She is joined by Juan Canal, Latino Community Credit Union, Durham, North Carolina, and Lisa Lambrecht, Valley Star Credit Union, Martinsville, Virginia. I would also like to introduce the executive management team. David Bramer, President, Chief Executive Officer. Janice Appleby, Chief Human Resources Officer. Joseph Bertato, Chief Culture Officer. Mark Brown, Chief Financial Officer. Fred Eisel, Chief Investment Officer. Lori Gall, Chief Risk Officer. Rodney May, Chief Engagement Officer. Jeffrey Stoner, Chief Technology and Strategy Officer. Timothy Sustek, Chief Credit Officer. We also have several other corporate staff with us today as well. Thank you. I would like to appoint Jamie Agostino as the meeting moderator and Bonnie Cameron as the recording secretary for the 2021 annual meeting. And now I would like to ask our board secretary, Scott Weaver, if we have a quorum.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there is a quorum.
Thank you, Scott. The minutes of the Vizo Financial Corporate Credit Union annual meeting, which was held on September 16, 2020, were provided prior to the meeting's commencement. I'd like to call for any corrections, additions, and/or deletions at this time. Select the raised hand icon if you would like to comment, and your line will be unmuted. Hearing none, Are there any objections to approving the minutes of the September 16, 2020 annual meeting of Vizo Financial Corporate Credit Union? Again, select the raised hand icon if you have an objection and your line will be unmuted. Great, the motion carries. We'll move on to the officers' reports, and I'll provide the chairman's report first. This year's annual report was once again produced in electronic form, and a link to the report was provided to all registered attendees. It is also available on the Vizo Financial website. The official written chairman executive's report appears in the 2020 annual report. However, I do wish to make a few additional comments today. There is no easy way to describe what we've all gone through over the past year and a half. As credit unions, as providers of financial services to our communities, as people just trying to live fulfilled lives, the pandemic turned our whole world upside down. There was no telling what type of impact it would have on us or for how long we would be operating within this new pandemic, more remote environment. But out of the many negatives of the pandemic, we've also experienced a great number of positives. First and foremost is that credit unions have proved as resilient as ever thanks to our cooperative nature. Our predecessors, the great Filene, Desjardins, and so on, also had collaboration in mind. Little did they know how useful those building blocks would be all these years. Over the course of 2020 and so far in 2021, Vizo Financial has done its best to work with credit unions for their survival and successes, as well as our own. We've done this through several strategies. Collaborating with members to move funds from our EBA account, allowing us to control the size of our balance sheet and boost our key ratios. Collaborating with other corporate credit unions to expand the use of the central liquidity facility as an emergency liquidity vehicle for all credit unions. Investing in entities that advance our ability to provide future key payment solutions for our members. In May 2020, we acquired Aptus Solutions, LLC, with two other corporate credit unions to have greater control over developments in the payments arena. Partnering with CU Answers to provide an upgraded core processing solution to our member credit unions. Providing member fee givebacks and fee credits of over 2.1 million to provide members some financial relief during a very difficult year. And just being an ally and partner to our member credit unions because that's what we all needed most. There is no shortage of the generosity and caring among the Vizo Financial family. Our staff, our members, our friends and partners showed their true colors in the face of some of our most difficult times. It's been a pleasure to see just how amazing our movement can be when we stand together and work as one. This completes my chairman's report. The reports of the treasurer, the credit committee, and the supervisory committee were printed in the annual report. Unless there are any questions on those reports, we will accept those as presented and move on. I'll now call on David Bramer to provide the executive report.
Jerry, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, well, thank you. For some reason, my video is failing to work. I'm not sure why. I think as you notice, as you started the meeting, I all of a sudden entered 3 different times because I couldn't get my video. But unfortunately, you won't see my smiling face today, but I am prepared to give my executive report. First off, I'd like to thank the board for their support. The last 18 months has been quite the interesting time for us at Vizo. So I really appreciate the opportunity to lead this organization as we move forward. Also, everything that we've succeeded in doing is thanks to the employees. I want to thank all of the employees for their great work over the last couple of years. And of course, the members for your continued support. Also, I'd like to take a quick shout out to Jay Murray, who co-led the company with me for 4.5 years since our merger. We really miss Jay's contributions, but really appreciate what he did for the corporate over his 30 years at both Mid-Atlantic and then Vizo. So if we go to my first slide, I can't go to any presentation without going to slides. First off is just reinforcing our vision for the company, driving credit union success through excellence. Excellence speaks to our products, unmentioned expertise, that's our staff, and then engaged partnerships, and that's our relationship with our members and really our relationship with our key vendors and partners. Next slide is also, I always like reinforcing our core values. This is who we are: integrity, passion for service, unified team, and really an organization that prides itself on continuing to learn. And that's what we really believe in going forward. So today I'm going to talk about really 3 themes as quickly as possible as I can do with my slides. I can't get through a presentation without showing some graphs. So if we go to the next slide, I'm going to talk about our current financial condition, then a quick reflection on the successes of 2020 and kind of lessons learned, and then the organizational focus going forward. So in terms of our assets and balance sheet, challenge number 1 for us coming out of the pandemic or going into the pandemic was the size of our balance sheet. And you can see on this, our assets were running pretty consistent around $4 billion since the merger until 2020. At the end of 2019, lending had slowed a little at credit unions, so we saw a little uptick. But then you can see a major jump caused by the pandemic and the stimulus. Well, this slide only shows the half the picture. These are our average assets on the balance sheet. If we go to the next slide, you will see this is really what happened to our balance sheet if we did not have the EBA. The excess balance account allows us to move member balances into an account at the Fed where we can hold member balances. We've got over 170 credit unions now utilizing our EBA program. And thanks to those credit unions, we've been able to manage down the size of the balance sheet by $4 billion. If you looked at you can see 2016 through 2019, average assets with or without the EBA were pretty much the same. And in fact, 2019, we only averaged 7 million in the EBA. In 2020, we averaged about 586 million in the EBA. In 2021, we were averaging over 4 billion in the EBA. This has allowed, now that we have enough participation in the EBA, we should really be able to control the size of our balance sheet going forward. So next slide. Well, how have retained earnings? As you can see, since the merger, we have continually improved our retained earnings. And then all of a sudden in 2021, we have jumped 100 million. If we go to the next slide, this is retained earnings. Next slide, Tier 1 capital also shows the 100 million increase. Tier 1 capital is retained earnings plus the member capital. So all of our growth has been in the retained earnings. So how did we go from progressively increasing net income to a huge jump of 100 million? Well, that's based on, if we go to the next slide, you can see we have begun receiving recoveries from the U.S. Central Estate. Now, for those of you who've been around the corporate system, the credit union system since 2009, can remember that during the financial crisis, U.S. Central, a wholesale corporate owned by the corporates, was conserved. We had to write off all of our capital. So the 3 corporates in 2009 that make up Vizo Financial today collectively wrote off just about $321 million in capital at US Central. We thought at the time that the write-off, which is based on market values that had sunk on mortgage-backed securities, might recover. We did not know to what extent. Well, in April this year, we received our first recovery payment of $24 million. And then in late August, we just received right about $125 million. So we have now recovered $149 million of the 320, which is about a 46% recovery so far. We have reserved of this 149, $60 million to pay back in a member distribution, which I will talk about in a second. Overall, when the dust settles, we anticipate recovering 80 to 85% of that 321 million that was written off 12 years ago. For our members who wrote off capital, we expect to reimburse our members 100% of what they wrote off. Next slide, please. So the member distributions, how these recoveries come to the corporate, they come to us as a recovery directly into retained earnings. So any member distribution is essentially coming out of retained earnings. By NCUA regulation and the Federal Credit Union Act, the only ones who can receive a member distribution out of retained earnings or member distributions are member credit unions. So a credit union that may have written off capital in 2019 but closed their account at corporate, did not or did not recapitalize and meet the requirements to be a capitalized member, if you're not considered a member, you will not be part of, you can't by regulation be a part of any member distribution. So the member distributions will go to credit unions that are full capital members. The three corporates, as I said, that make up Vizo Financial, each had variations in their capital requirements that were required for membership. So we grandfathered anyone as of October 1st when we created Vizo Financial that met the requirements for any level of membership at that time is part of our full capital members. And anyone after that has had to meet it based on our PCC requirement. Our first distribution to the members, we anticipate that 60 million should be paid out before the end of September. We originally anticipated October, but we didn't anticipate receiving money till September. So we are hoping by the end of the month, we will distribute to our members. And that distribution should be in the neighborhood of 50 to 60%. We actually think it'll be closer to 60%. So if you lost or wrote off 100,000 12 years ago, you would get 60,000 refund later this month. We do expect to be able to pay back 100% of what was written off by future distributions, which are expected in 2022. So next slide. So how did this recovery impact our capital ratio? Well, our capital ratio has improved for two reasons. Obviously, the recovery in 100 million of additional retained earnings, but also thanks to the EBA and getting our average assets under control. Every month now, our 12-month rolling average assets are coming down, which are helping our capital ratio. As you can see, we jumped from 196. We actually hit a low of 189 in March. We're now at 351, and we should continue to see that improve throughout the rest of this year. And I would think throughout the rest of 2022 as we continue stable earnings plus some future recoveries. If we go to the next slide, you can see the same turnaround in our leverage capital ratio. This includes the member capital. We do have to reduce investments that we have in QSOs, which is about 8.5 million as of today from our capital, but we have turned that around. And the next slide shows what we've done with total capital. The next slide after this shows our risk-based capital ratios, which regardless of fluctuations in asset size, really is a reflection of the credit quality of our portfolio and our assets. And you can see with the 100 million in additional retained earnings, we're now at about 39% risk-based capital, so very strong. But this really indicates that even with the surge in deposits, the makeup of our portfolio remained extremely strong. So moving ahead, I will now kind of talk a little about reflections on 2020. For us, we made over 18 million, which was kind of record earnings for the organization. And we did that in a very strange environment. The pandemic, not something we could have really imagined. Totally turned our professional and personal lives upside down. After a couple months, when we realized this was not going to be a short-term event, we really got back on track and got moving. Staff has been remote since March. 90% of staff remains remote. We were hoping to get out of that remote environment by the end of August, but we've extended that on a month-to-month basis. So really what our biggest win, I would say, or success in 2020, in addition to the financial success and our ability to serve members without really any serious degradation in quality of service, was the staff unity and how the staff reacted and how the staff pulled together to really make our move to remote successful. So what are the takeaways? Really the resiliency of credit unions. Our member credit unions worlds were much more impacted because your business model actually changed. Our business model remained the same. We always serve our members remotely. What changed for us was how we interact internally, and we've worked really hard to make that a success. The importance of business continuity planning. We learned that the planning we had done was very successful. Within 2 weeks, we had moved 90% of operations remote and really didn't miss a beat, which we're very proud of. We learned we could work very effectively in remote environment. In fact, we've now sold our main office in Middletown, Pennsylvania. We leased back the whole office for a year, but we'll be cutting back to 40% of the space, which will save us quite a bit in operating expenses going forward. I think what we really did best in 2020, and this is the pandemic or any kind of severe unexpected event that occurs, is taking care of your employees, listening to what their needs, what their worries are, and really adapting your work environment to allow as much flexibility so that we put their safety and their needs as a priority in addition to serving the members. And I think what we really did well was this whole idea of adjusting and move forward after the kind of blip of the first couple months of dealing with moving remote and kind of the unknown circumstances the pandemic caused. We quickly got back on track and moved forward. And then last was our willingness to reevaluate everything we do and make changes, which you will see going forward as we try to become a more focused organization. So if we go to the next slide, this is really kind of looking ahead and where our focus is going to be over the next 3 to 5 years. We've been operating under product pillars, which included money management, payments, people development, risk management, technology. Well, we realize technology is a backbone for everything we do, but particularly in the payments area. But we're not really a technology company, so it's not a product we are really offering credit unions other than a solution that supports our payments and money management and education. So we've really kind of reevaluated what our core is, what we can do best. And of course, money management, which was our core foundation, will remain a core of the company. Payments, we really want to ramp up what we do and what we can offer in payments. I think we've fallen a little behind, but we are working rapidly and we'll be putting a lot more resources into being able to offer our members the most current payment solutions possible. Currently, the big initiative is on faster payments, where we could be both the settlement and handle the operational transactions. Education training, we think that's a value add, is really leveraging the talent and knowledge we have to the best of our ability to help credit unions. And this fourth one is building CO Access community. CO Access is our partnership with CO Answers. Strategically, back in 2014, we bought Amos, which was a core processor. We really have felt all along the best way to build a community of credit unions that work together closely, where we can control operating expenses for those credit unions and provide a robust menu of digital services and products so that the credit unions can remain viable to their credit unions, was teaming up with a core. After spending a lot of time on the core we purchased, we really decided aligning ourselves with a larger core with a lot more resources made the most long-term sense for our members. And we really want to build this because we really feel with the core, we can integrate anything we do into the core and work with a whole lot of credit unions to collaborate on what do we need to be doing to improve services while keeping the core costs as inexpensive as possible. And next slide, please. And the key strategies and really our big value proposition as we see it, executing at high levels across everything we do, particularly money management, but also in the payments, leveraging our partnerships, both with our members and our key vendors, like a CO Answers, like a Digital Defense, entities that we use that we think can help credit unions. Leveraging our aggregated payment solutions, we are most successful the more usage we get out of any product, leveraging our staff expertise and maximizing collaborative efforts. So in summary, if we go to the last slide, is what's our commitment to all of you? We will always do what is in the best long-term interests of our members. Every decision we make is really what is in the best interest long-term, not maybe the best solution for the next 6 months, 12 months, but what's most viable, where can we be most successful long-term? We'll always look to maximize cooperation and collaboration. That's behind CO Access, but that's behind every relationship we have with our credit unions. And then last, but certainly not least, is this idea we will always place safety and soundness of member funds as a top priority. And with that, just want to thank you for your utilization of corporate services and your ongoing support. We look forward to serving you in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any questions for David? Hearing none, we will move on to old business. At this time, I would like to ask if there is any old business to be presented. Select the raised hand icon if you would like to comment, and your line will be unmuted. Please identify yourself by name and the credit union you represent when addressing the meeting. I am not aware of any unfinished old business. Hearing none, are there any new business items to be presented? If so, again, please identify yourself by name and the credit union represented. I am not aware of any at this time. Okay, great. Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce the 2021 Nominating Committee. Janice DeCorte from the Vizo board served as chair. She was joined by Susan DeStefano, First Capital Federal Credit Union, York, PA, and Brian Hedgepeth, Ronco Federal Credit Union, Franklin, Virginia. Janice, will you please provide us with the report of the nominating committee?
Absolutely, and thank you, Jerry. And I'd like to thank Sue and Brian for serving on the committee. The nominating committee met in accordance with our bylaws, and the following candidates for the 2021 election were selected. And that was Dan Berry with Duke University Federal Credit Union in Durham, North Carolina, Paul Hughes with Greenville Federal Credit Union in Greenville, South Carolina, Jerry King with Dexter Federal Credit Union in Wilmington, Delaware, Michael Thomas with Service First Federal Credit Union in Danville, Pennsylvania. No recommendations for nomination were rejected, and no nominations by petition were received. Again, this year, the board election was conducted via an online platform hosted by Survey and Ballot Systems to making participating in the election easy for our members. There were a total of 198 ballots cast, which was below our voting total of 221 ballots from the last election. We received several positive comments on the ease of use and the efficiency of this format. Thank you so much for participating in the online election, and we hope that each year more members will engage in the online election process. The election results were compiled by Survey and Ballot Systems. We are happy to announce that Dan Berry from Duke University Federal Credit Union and Paul Hughes from Greenville Federal Credit Union have been elected to the Vizo Board of Directors for 3-year terms. There was a tie for the third board seat between candidates Jerry King, President CEO of Dexter Federal Credit Union, and Michael Thomas, CFO of Service First Federal Credit Union. After discussing our options, we opted to keep this decision in our members' hands, so we will be holding a special election between these two candidates for the one remaining board seat with a 3-year term. Voting in this special election will begin tomorrow, September 9th, and run through Thursday, September 30th. An email from Survey Ballot Systems will be sent to members tomorrow, and we hope you and all of the Vizo financial membership will participate in this special election to fill the third open board seat. A communication will be sent to the membership announcing the results. Congratulations to Dan and Paul for their election to the board. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you, nominating committee, for your work during the 2021 nomination process. Next, I would like to recognize our retiring board member. We are very fortunate to have a great leader on the Vizo Financial Board who were willing to share their time and expertise in the corporate credit union system. And Jim McCall is certainly no exception. Jim retired from the Vizo Financial Board in April 2021. He has devoted over 35 years in the credit union system and has been a dedicated leader in the corporate credit union system for the last 15. Jim has served as a great leader at the corporate, in his credit union, and in his community. He served as board chair from September 2018 through September 2020. We will miss having Jim on the board. The board approved a resolution at their August meeting recognizing Jim's years of service to the corporate and the credit union industry as a whole. Jim, I personally want to thank you for your contributions to the corporate. You and I started our corporate credit union careers together as supervisory committee members with Mid-Atlantic Corporate, now Vizo Financial. You've worked tirelessly to advocate for small credit unions, and because of everything you've done over the years, we are a strong corporate credit union today because of your time and your efforts. I wish you all the best. We also have Scott Woods, Vizo Financial Board Member, who would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to just make a comment about Jim's role as the chairman of the corporate. I served as Jim's vice chairman and got a very up-close look as to not just Jim's intentions as a chairman, and that is to move Vizo from two modest-sized corporates into one aggregated, very large national player. And so not just to see his goals and intents, but to see how he went about it. Jim was very much a consensus builder. He not only expected, but quite candidly demanded involvement from all volunteers, that they contribute their opinions and their efforts into making the corporate into the organization that not just wanted to be, but needed to be. Jim leaned into addressing the governance procedures, processes, and philosophy that was needed to better serve the membership by a corporate of this size and complexity. He leaned into the transparency issue to make sure that we reflected the size and structure of the organization, as well as the needs and expectations of the membership. Examples included the volunteer roles and responsibilities, transparency and reporting to the membership, a proper and fair and scheduled evaluation process for the staff, and ensuring that compensation was commensurate with the market. Jim's leadership was not an easy thing to do, not just running a complex organization of his own, but also leading a growing and maturing organization like Vizo. I was very much honored to work as Jim's vice chair, but also to support him in the role that he did. I just wanted to say this, that the members of the corporate can rest assured that trusting in Jim, not just as a board member, but as a leader of the board, their trust was well placed, and the results were very solid. So Jim, it was a pleasure to work with you. I learned a lot, and wish you the best in the future.
I understand Jim has joined us for the meeting today. Jim, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Jerry, and thank you, Scott. I really appreciate that. I'd like to recognize and congratulate Dave Bremer for recently having been named both the president and CEO of Vizo Financial Corporate Credit Union, as well as Jay Murray on his retirement. The fact that this transfer of leadership occurred so smoothly is a testament to the strength of the merger several years back between Mid-Atlantic and First Carolina Corporate Credit Union. I'd also like to thank the leaders of the natural person credit unions and Vizo Financial's field of membership for having allowed me to serve on their behalf. First on the Supervisory Committee and then on the Board of Directors, culminating in my position as the prior board chairman, as well as the past and current board members and corporate staff for their individual contributions that have helped to shape what has become one of the best corporate credit unions in the industry. I'd also encourage our younger generation of credit union movement leaders to become more involved as industry volunteers, whether that be in local chapters, league associations, national trade groups, and or with Vizo Financial Corporate Credit Union. Your nomination opens the door to both future committee and board opportunities, as well as a fountain of knowledge and a network of great people you otherwise might never meet. In hindsight, I'm so very grateful for my time as a volunteer with the corporate and hope that my service was a benefit to both the corporate management team and the natural person credit unions who elected me. Thank you for this recognition and continued best wishes. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Jim. There being no further agenda items to address, are there any objections to adjourning the 2021 annual business meeting of Vizo Financial Corporate Credit Union? If so, please raise your hand and your line will be unmuted. Seeing none, the motion carries. Thank you all for attending our virtual annual meeting. Next year's annual meeting will be held earlier in the year and is set for June 15th. I hope to see you all there. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Jerry.
You're very welcome. Thank you.